Okay. So, how far are we supposed to go in order for us to establish what we want to say or what we want to talk about as history?
That's a good question. So I think yes, it is kind of hard, like you said, because um, you have European history go further, sometimes further back. So I think honestly that's a question that I really haven't uh, fleshed out. I think the only thing we can kind of really do is go with what we have. Um, I think one thing that I've noticed is that you have a lot of ancient Kemetic, also known as Egyptian sources that we can use. There are other sources we can use, but I think it's kind of hard to kind of pinpoint how far back uh, we should go. Yeah, I think that's kind of a question I think kind of really need to wrestle with a little bit more.
All right. Okay. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Um, Now I'm trying to understand. Okay, the other day I was interviewing a guy, I think a professor in US. Then I was talking about the importance of collaboration between African scholars and Western scholar. In this case, US scholar. In that there is a lot of things that is actually going on within African history and African reality that is sort of bizarre almost. No. Okay, let me explain what I mean. Up until recently, if we in Africa need to know anything about African diaspora, which is the other part of Africa that are not in Africa, we need to know this through the Europeans. And if those, say, Africans in the diaspora want to know anything, particularly those that have been a victim of slavery and haven't have a kind of a direct connection with Africa, they will need to know about Africa through also the lenses of the European. And this has placed the European at an advantageous position. And this helped them to sort of play us a lot in that they can tell you what they want to tell you about me, and they can tell me what they want to tell me about you, which means you don't know me, I don't know you, so we become sort of alien to each other. But we are not supposed to be like that, and that makes it very difficult to know who we are. But this is 2023. We have internet, we have a lot of resources. I'm trying to understand how much collaboration should take place between even US universities and universities in Nigeria or in Ghana or in Sierra Leone or in South Africa or in Kenya or in Congo should take place if we are talking about African history. How much collaboration should take place so that we can have enough raw materials to analyze our history? Because again, I want to repeat, Europeans cannot teach African history. They never had the intention to do that. They will never do that, not even in a million years. So if we want to know about our root, which is Africa, because if we think about the root word, African diaspora, we take away Africa, the diaspora doesn't make any sense. So it means that we need to do the raw work, the hard work, the digging to learn about us. So how much should collaboration play in this part?
I think collaboration is vitally important, just to kind of combat the ways in which Africans on the continent may view Africans throughout the diaspora and vice versa. And so I think just it's important to collaborate to kind of just tear down those misconceptions, because there are a lot of misconceptions on both sides. So I think it's important, and it's important also to have this exchange of ideas and knowledge where each can pour into the other. And I think the whole idea of collaboration can really tear down the idea of opposition, so that it really becomes this idea of we're brothers and sisters, because ultimately we really are. And so I think it's important to collaborate. And I noticed that in some circles you have continental African universities collaborating with institutes here in the United States, just in different places. But I think it's vitally important, and that collaboration will help to kind of bridge the gaps, if you know that exist, because of these false ideas that have been kind of perpetuated from Eurocentric scholarship.
All right, there, I would like to remain there for another few seconds. Um, Now, let's look at you, for example, a scholar in the diaspora, okay, in the United States, who is doing African study. Now, let's say you want materials from Africa to sort of elaborate on your studies or to expatiate on your argument, because perhaps you have students who want to know about Africa. What material would you need in Africa? Because okay, materials will be okay in the context of history. In this case, we need to talk about maybe the experiences of the people who have been there. This experience might be maybe in the form of language, linguistics, in the form of I don't know, or economy, in terms of war, in terms of culture, in terms of kind of refiguration of different things. Which material would you need? So I'm just like sort of throwing it out there, some of the things that just come to my mind. But I'm not a historian. Okay, as an expert in this area, what would you need to be able to make your argument as an African historian expert in this area?
So I think just kind of answering that question kind of depends on what's being studied. So I guess just in my research. So I guess maybe if I can look at, just take for example my work on Thurman. So I did, continue to look at his philosophies and just kind of the ways in which he saw community. So just for example, one thing, if I'm looking at Thurman, it would also be helpful to look and see the works of continental African philosophers, just to kind of give that comparison to Thurman as an African-American philosopher and theologian. Then I could also look at the works of continental African philosophers and theologians. And it's interesting that you kind of bring that up, because as I was doing my lit review for my dissertation, I noticed that the works that I was looking at, or looking for just kind of some background on African descended philosophers, there were a lot of gaps in the literature. There's some work out there on that, but not as much as should be. So I guess just for example, I would want to look at and get information on continental African philosophers. So I would need information along those lines. So just kind of an example to be able to answer that question.
All right, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. You see, I'm asking those questions because I'm sort of throwing it out there also for African scholars, because I often say here that what have happened to African diaspora have happened to Africa too. In that time, or still now, when the European was playing the middleman between African and the African diaspora, they choose what they want to tell us. In that, for example, for many Africans, they were told that their history started from colonialism, because that had been an important part of our engagement between African and Europe. And to African diaspora, particularly those who have been victim of slavery, they have been told that their history, therefore, started from slavery, which means everything before that is nothing. That is pretty, because now I just made mention of language and culture. No, if we take up any language in Africa, any language, say maybe Igbo, for example, which is the language that is spoken in eastern Nigeria, this language is dated back to several thousands of years. And if they have been spoken for several thousands of years, meaning that there have been a kind of interaction, and it have not been spoken the same way, that modified for several years now. With me, who have been speaking these languages? If it have been spoken, how have it been spoken? In what context? What have it been used for? Okay, what about war? The war that have been fought in different parts of Africa, several thousands of years, many of them, empires that have been built. But who have these people been engaging with? We talk about, for example, just war. I'm coming from Edo State in the south of Nigeria. In my state, for example, we have what is known as the Benin War. The Benin War is said to have been longer than the wars of China. What is a war? A war usually is a barrier that stands between two objects, stands between two people in this sense, no? In that there is an empire, that is a city, let's call it like that, no? Now, why would you build a wall? You are building a wall because there is something that needs to be protected inside the wall. Okay, that also explains that there is something that need to be defended against outside the wall. Which means if the Benin Empire was strong, it means there was an equally strong people outside of Benin that could evade. Which means the Benin were interacting, were engaging, were having war with other people that were equally strong. Because if they were not strong enough, there was no need to build the wall. So by taking out these few elements, we can already understand that the story that the European told us does not stand, no?